these brain asymmetries are influencing our everyday lives pretty much every second of our existence.
Why are people right or left-handed?
Why somebody's left or right-handed has all to do with the organization of their brain. So handedness, while named for the hands, has nothing to do with the hands. The brain has two halves, left and right half, and the left half is controlling the right half of the body, so also the right arm, and the right half of the brain is controlling the left part of the body, so also the left hand. And we know that these two parts of the brain, they're not completely identical. So they often have different tasks, and we call that brain dominance or hemispheric asymmetries. And handedness is one of these hemispheric asymmetries. For a left-handed person, the right motor cortex, the right motor part of the brain, is dominant for fine motor movements like writing a love letter or drawing a doodle or whatever. And for a right-handed person, that is reversed. So why somebody's left or right-handed is because they have different brain dominances for hand movements.
So being right or left-handed doesn't kind of set the brain up in a whole different way.
No. So this is what people thought, like maybe in the 70s or 80s. But newer research pretty much shows that what it does is it affects our motor abilities. But all these ideas that people had like 20, 30 years ago, that, for example, like left-handers are more creative. There's a very recent, very interesting study on that. And that basically shows both left and right-handers are very convinced that left-handers are more creative. Left-handers also very significantly choose certain jobs where they think creativity is something that is important for the job. But if you actually measure artistic ability or creative thinking or creative ability, what the results show in big meter studies is pretty much left-handers can be great creative artists. Left-handers can also be not creative at all. And the same goes for right-handers. No? So the objectively measured ability, if you go away from these like very small studies people did like in the 70s or 80s, and you really go to massive numbers of people, shows there's no difference in like creativity in the brain between left and right-handers. There's just a very big difference in the belief about that left-handers are more creative than right-handers. And similar things have also been found for intelligence. So people thought left-handers might be more intelligent. Other people thought they are less intelligent. Then there was the idea there's more fluctuation in intelligence. What do the largest studies show? There's no difference. That is, a lot of things are sort of societal beliefs that are not really backed up by the science, the large scale science we do today. When we find differences in sort of like performances or abilities between left and right-handedness, these have often to do with like situational demands and surprise, like all these sports findings. But this is not that left-handers are inherently better boxers or tennis players or pitchers. It is just in a system in which people train mostly facing right-handed opponents. They have this element of rarity, which makes them harder to handle because the opponents didn't train for that situation as well typically and don't encounter it as much.
So for me, I'm left-handed sitting down, right left-handed, brush my teeth left-handed. But if I'm standing up, I'm right-handed. Like sports, I throw a ball right-handed, I shoot a basketball right-handed. Why would that be? Like, why would there be the differences in those for some people like that? Like, why would somebody be one hand this way and one hand that way?
handedness is sort of a continuum, right? So people used to measure handedness by just asking for writing hand. But these days what we do is we try to get a larger spectrum of behaviors people do with their hand. And what you typically find, what's quite interesting, is that most right-handed people, they use their right hand for pretty much everything. So they're really like 100% right-handed for every single behavior, and very rarely do anything with the left hand. Left-handers, on the other side, typically show the pattern that you're describing. There are very few left-handers that are actually using the left hand for absolutely everything, but it's more common that they use the left hand for the majority of activities, and especially for writing. For most people, the writing is what defines them as a left-hander. But it's not uncommon that a left-hander would, for example, like throw a baseball or open something with the right hand also. And the question about why this happens has, I think, at some point to do with the environment. So can you remember, like, who taught you how to throw a baseball?
Oh, probably my father, who was right-handed.
Yeah, your dad, when he was right-handed. So what typically happens is, since there are more people who are right-handed, a lot of left-handed kids then have right-handed parents, and they teach them these behaviors like throwing. They are not fine motor behaviors, but they're just like much more easier to do with the non-dominant hand, right? So for example, if you think about writing with the right hand, that's probably harder than throwing a baseball with the right hand. So these are obviously much easier to learn with the non-dominant hand. And if you now think you spend a lot of fun times with your dad throwing baseballs, and you just wanted to do it like he did, and you basically did what we call imitation learning, then your learning history, because you learned it from right-handed person, might have influenced your preference here.
Does handedness extend to footedness? Like, if you're left-handed, are you left-footed?
To some extent, but not 100%. These brain asymmetries are influencing our everyday lives pretty much every second of our existence. So for example, if you remember last time you kissed somebody, have you ever consciously thought about that you have a very strong asymmetry in your preference on how to turn your head when kissing? So most right-handed people turn their head to the right when kissing, and they find it very, very weird to turn it to the other side. And there's lots of other things like that, right? So if you hug somebody, you hug that person almost always with the same arm leading into the hug. People have a favorite side on to chew their food on, right, of their mouth. So you don't like chew all the food in the center. You have one side where you like to chew your food on better because it makes you feel better emotionally, and so on and so on.